I never thought my husband's funeral would be the place I'd hear my daughter-in-law plotting to take all my property away from me. Hurry up with the inheritance. I'm putting the old woman in a nursing home. She said it like I wasn't even there. And my son? Just don't make it obvious, Vanessa. She's still grieving. We'll handle it later. Handle it? Handle what? The world tilted. The flowers, the candles, the soft organ music, all of it blurred as my stomach churned. I felt my throat tighten, a wave of heat crawling up my neck. They were standing near the back, just behind a marble column. Vanessa's perfectly manicured nails clutched Thomas's sleeve as she whispered again. "It's her or us, Thomas. You want that house, don't you? And the accounts? I'm not waiting for her to wander off into dementia. We move fast or she'll find some way to tie up the money." The blood drained from my face. I gripped the pew until my nails dug into the polished wood. My husband, God rest his soul, had promised me I'd be safe, that he had arranged everything to ensure I wouldn't have to worry. "Don't worry about the future, Clara," he had said, his voice soft but certain. "I've made sure you'll be protected." But he hadn't known what Vanessa was capable of, or that Thomas, my sweet boy who used to bring me wildflowers from the park, would stand by while his wife plotted to erase me from my own life. I tried to calm my pounding heart to convince myself I was imagining things. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe grief was twisting my mind. But then Vanessa laughed, low and cold. "She's old. She won't even see it coming." The sound sent a shiver down my spine. The pastor's voice boomed from the front. "We will now proceed to the final prayer." Everyone stood. My legs felt like lead. Thomas didn't even glance my way. Vanessa was already pulling him toward the exit, her sharp heels clicking on the stone floor. I stayed seated, gripping the pew as though it could keep me from breaking apart. Did I really hear that? Or was my mind playing tricks on me? No, I wasn't imagining it. I'd heard every word. And suddenly, I wasn't just mourning my husband anymore. I was fighting to keep my life from being taken apart piece by piece by the two people I loved most. I couldn't sleep that night. The house was too quiet without Harold's soft snoring echoing down the hall. Every shadow seemed sharper. Every creak of the floorboards made my chest tighten. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the framed wedding photo on the dresser. We'd taken it 42 years ago, before life had hardened us both a little. He looked so alive then, eyes bright, shoulders square, as if he could hold up the whole world. "Don't worry about the future, Clara. I've made sure you'll be protected," he told me during one of his last lucid days, gripping my hand with surprising strength. But those words kept rattling in my head now, clashing with Vanessa's hissed threat at the funeral. "Hurry up with the inheritance. I'm putting the old woman in a nursing home." And worse, Thomas's silence. Not a protest. Not even a "mom deserves better." Just a quiet, cowardly, "we'll handle it later." Would he really let this happen to me? A lump formed in my throat. My own son. I pushed the thought away and reached for the drawer in my nightstand. My fingers hesitated over the handle, trembling slightly. It had been there for months. The envelope Harold gave me after his second heart attack, marked in his neat, looping handwriting. If anything happens to me, at the time, I hadn't wanted to look at it. I told myself it wasn't necessary. Harold would recover. He always did. But now I wasn't so sure. The house felt colder, somehow, as if Vanessa had already started stripping the warmth out of it. Earlier that evening, Thomas had texted me. No call, just a curt message. "We'll stop by tomorrow to check on you." I could practically hear Vanessa's voice behind it, dripping with false sweetness. "She's fragile, Thomas. We need to make decisions for her own good." I gritted my teeth and yanked the drawer open. The envelope was still there, yellowed slightly at the edges. My hands hovered over it. I wasn't ready to see whatever truth Harold had left me. Not yet. Instead, I closed the drawer carefully and walked over to the window. Outside, the garden Harold loved so much was bathed in silver moonlight. His rose bushes were still in bloom, soft pink petals glowing faintly in the dark. Would Vanessa rip them all out when she claimed the house? Would Thomas even care? My stomach twisted. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let Harold's life's work, our life's work, be taken by two greedy hands and a cowardly silence, not without a fight. I sat back on the bed, staring at the drawer. Tomorrow I open it. Tomorrow I find out what Harold knew. The next morning started quietly enough. I was standing at the kitchen counter, staring at the kettle as it hissed and spat steam, my mind still foggy from another restless night. Harold's envelope sat unopened on the table behind me, its yellowed paper almost glowing in the soft morning light. I couldn't bring myself to open it yet, not with my heart pounding like this. At precisely 10 a.m., I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway, Thomas's car. Through the lace curtains, I saw Vanessa step out first, her heels clicking against the stones like a metronome. She was dressed impeccably, as always, in a cream blouse and tailored pants that probably cost more than Harold's entire wardrobe. Thomas followed her, shoulders hunched, face pale. I pressed a hand to my stomach, trying to calm the sick, swirling feeling there. They were early. Too early. The doorbell rang, cheerful and insistent. I opened the door and forced a polite smile. "Morning?" Vanessa's lips stretched into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Clara! You're up already. Good, we thought we'd pop in and check on you." She breezed past me into the kitchen without waiting for an invitation. Thomas trailed behind her, his eyes darting nervously to the floor. What are they planning? I closed the door quietly and followed them. Vanessa set down a tray on the table with practiced grace. "I brought you tea and something to look at, just in case." She pulled out a glossy brochure from her handbag and slid it across the table toward me. Maplewood Senior Living. The cover showed a cheerful elderly couple sitting on a manicured lawn, all smiles and soft focused lighting. Just in case? I stared at it for a long moment before lifting my gaze. "What's this?" Vanessa's voice turned syrupy sweet. "Oh, Clara, it's just something to think about. Maplewood has such wonderful programs for seniors. Group activities, gourmet meals, medical staff on site. You deserve to relax now. Relax. In other words, get out of your own home." Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his fingers drumming against the edge of the table. "Mom," he started, not meeting my eyes, "maybe it would be safer. You know, someone to check on you. Vanessa's just thinking about your well-being." My jaw clenched so tightly I thought my teeth would crack. I forced a polite smile and picked up the brochure with trembling hands. How thoughtful. Inside, happy faces beamed from every page. Private suites, on-site hair salon, weekly excursions. I wanted to laugh, or maybe scream. Maplewood residents often say it feels like a permanent vacation, Vanessa chirped, as if reading from a script. A permanent vacation from my own life. More like? I set the brochure down carefully and folded my hands in my lap. "I'll think about it." Vanessa's smile widened. No rush, of course, but it would give us all peace of mind. Peace of mind for who? The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Thomas finally spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "We could take a tour together next week, just to see it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to remind him whose house he grew up in, whose hands made his meals and bandaged his scraped knees. Instead, I nodded slowly. Perhaps. Vanessa glanced at Thomas with a small, satisfied smirk. They thought they were winning. But inside, my mind was screaming, they're trying to push me out of my own home. I sat alone, clutching Harold's unopened envelope. Whatever's in here, I need it now. 2 days later, I sat in my car outside Hamilton and Associates, staring at the gold letters on their glass door. The last time I was here, Harold was still alive. He had insisted on handling a few legal things after his first heart attack. I hadn't wanted to hear about wills or trusts back then. It felt too morbid, too final. But now, with Vanessa circling like a vulture and Thomas avoiding my eyes, I wasn't sure what Harold had arranged. What if they're right? What if they can put me in a home against my will? The thought made my stomach twist. I took a deep breath and opened the car door. My heels clicked against the pavement as I forced my shoulders back and walked into the office. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Hughes. Mr. Hamilton will see you now." The air inside smelled faintly of old books and lemon polish. It felt too calm for the storm raging in my chest. Mr. Hamilton rose when I entered his office. He was a kind-faced man in his late 60s, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Clara," he said warmly. "I was sorry to hear about Harold. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I lied, sinking into the leather chair across from him. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm here to update my will, but first, I need to ask about the arrangements Harold made for me. He always said he'd made sure I'd be protected." Hamilton's brows furrowed slightly. "Of course, Harold was very thorough." He opened a file on his desk, flipping through pages with practiced hands. "Your husband placed all jointly owned assets into a trust before his passing. You're the sole beneficiary. The house, the bank accounts, they're fully under your control." Relief surged through me, but it was short-lived. "There's one important clause you should know about," Hamilton continued, his tone turning serious. "The house cannot be sold or transferred unless 2 independent physicians deem you mentally or physically unfit to live alone. And even then, it would require a court order." I blinked. "So they can't just decide I need to be put in a home?" "Absolutely not." His voice was firm. "The protections Harold put in place were designed to prevent exactly that." For the first time in days, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. But then Hamilton's expression darkened. "Clara, families can get creative when inheritance is involved. I've seen it all. Emotional manipulation, false medical claims, even forged documents." A chill ran down my spine. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying, stay alert. If anyone pressures you into signing anything, call me first. And if you feel unsafe at home, don't wait." I nodded slowly, gripping my handbag tight. The thought of Vanessa's smug smile made my skin crawl, and Thomas, my own son, standing by as she plotted. I couldn't let them take what Harold and I built, not without a fight. As I left the office, Hamilton's warning echoed in my mind. Families can get creative. I tightened my grip on my keys, a cold dread settling in my stomach. What if it's already started? 2 hours after I got back from Mr. Hamilton's office, the house already felt heavier, like it knew what was coming. I was in the hallway dusting Harold's picture frames when I heard the front door open. "Mom?" Thomas's voice called out. Vanessa's heels clicked across the floor behind him. "Clara? Are you home?" I set the duster down and took a deep breath. "Here we go again." Vanessa appeared in the doorway, her smile wide and rehearsed. "Clara! We thought we'd stop by and check on you." Thomas lingered behind her, eyes down, clutching his tablet like a shield. "That's thoughtful of you," I said softly, forcing a smile. "I'm doing fine." Vanessa's eyes swept the room, pausing at Harold's photo on the mantel. "You must feel so lonely in this big house," she said with mock sympathy. "It's a lot for one person to manage." Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone and began scrolling. "Actually, Thomas and I were just looking at some lovely senior communities. Look at this one." She shoved the screen under my nose. A video played of smiling retirees clinking wine glasses at a sunlit dining table. "It's practically like living at a resort," Vanessa gushed. "Wouldn't it be nice to let someone else handle the cleaning, cooking, the stress?" My jaw tightened. "That sounds luxurious." Thomas finally spoke up, his voice low. "Mom, maybe it would be safer. You've been through so much lately." "Safer for who?" I forced another smile and changed the subject. "Can I get you both some tea?" Vanessa waved a hand dismissively. "Oh no, we're fine." "Of course you are." Later that evening, I was heading to the kitchen for water when I heard murmurs from the living room. I stopped. Vanessa's voice was low but sharp. "We can't keep waiting, Thomas. She's vulnerable right now. This is the time to act." Thomas sighed. "I know, but what if she resists? Then we make sure she can't. It's called being responsible." I peeked around the corner. Vanessa was seated on the couch beside Thomas, showing him something on her phone. "Look at these care homes. So many glowing reviews. And once she's settled, we can finally renovate this place, maybe sell it." Thomas rubbed his temples. I just don't want her to hate me. She won't even understand what's happening," Vanessa snapped. "We need to secure power of attorney, Thomas. Otherwise, she could do something reckless with the assets." "Power of attorney." My stomach lurched. I slipped back into the hallway, my breath quickening. A few minutes later, I passed Thomas's study on the way upstairs. The door was slightly ajar. He was sitting at his desk, his face illuminated by the glow of his tablet. The words on the screen made my blood run cold. How to gain power of attorney over an elderly parent. My fingers dug into the banister until my knuckles turned white. They're planning to take everything. 2 mornings later, Vanessa appeared in my doorway with her brightest smile yet. "Clara, I thought I'd take you to Dr. Patel today. Just a little wellness checkup." She didn't wait for me to answer, just stepped inside with her perfume cloud trailing her like a threat. "You've been under so much stress lately," she added, brushing invisible dust off my shoulder. "We just want to make sure you're in good health." Thomas followed behind her, his gaze fixed firmly on the floor. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. Why today? Why so urgent? Then it hit me. This wasn't about my health. It was about getting a doctor, any doctor, to declare me frail. If they could get medical proof I couldn't manage alone, they'd have leverage for power of attorney, or worse. "I don't think," I began, but Vanessa's voice cut like a blade. "Clara, please, don't make this harder than it has to be." Her tone was still sugary sweet, but her fingers clenched around her designer handbag. The ride to the clinic was silent, except for the ticking of the car's turn signal. I stared out the window at passing trees, my heart thudding. "Stay calm, Clara. Don't let them see you panic." At the reception desk, Vanessa leaned in to speak to the nurse, her voice too low for me to hear. What was she saying? That I was forgetful? Confused? Thomas sat stiffly in the waiting area, pretending to scroll through his phone. He's in on it, I thought bitterly. My own son. Dr. Patel greeted me warmly when my name was called. "Mrs. Hughes, good to see you. Let's check in." Vanessa started to follow us into the exam room, but Dr. Patel raised a hand. "Actually, I'd like to speak with Clara alone first." Vanessa's smile faltered for half a second before returning, strained and brittle. "Of course." Once the door closed, I exhaled shakily. "Doctor, I think my daughter-in-law is trying to get you to say I can't live alone." Dr. Patel's kind eyes softened. "Clara, don't worry. Vanessa called earlier, asking for an independent capacity evaluation. I refused. Relief washed over me. You did?" He nodded firmly. "You're perfectly capable of managing yourself, and I won't sign anything that would put you out of your home." My hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from quiet determination. "Thank you," I whispered. "But be careful," he added gently. "Families can be persistent." When we walked back into the waiting room, Vanessa jumped to her feet, her smile already back in place. "All done? So quick." But when her eyes met mine, she paused. Something in my expression had changed. I wasn't the frail, grieving widow she thought I was. Not anymore. I was steel, wrapped in soft skin. As we left the clinic, Vanessa's fake smile cracked for just a moment, and I stared straight back at her, my voice calm and cold. "I know what you're doing." That night, the house felt heavier than ever. I sat at the kitchen table in the glow of a single lamp, Harold's envelope in my hands. For days I had avoided it, telling myself I wasn't ready, that I needed more time. But time was the one thing I didn't have anymore. Vanessa's sugary voice still echoed in my head. "She's frail, Thomas. She won't even see it coming." And Thomas, my boy, he hadn't said a word in my defense. My fingers traced Harold's handwriting. "If anything happens to me." I took a deep breath, then tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep my promise to grow old with you. You've always been stronger than you know. But I also know our family, how greed can creep in where love should be. That's why I set things up to protect you. This house is your anchor. No one, not even Thomas, can sell it or force you out without a court order and medical proof. They might try, Clara, but you hold the power. I couldn't stop them from wanting more, but I made sure you'd never have to give it to them. Stand firm, my love. All my heart, Harold. Tears blurred the words as I pressed the letter to my chest. I could almost hear his voice, warm and steady, the way it used to be when he'd hold my hand across the kitchen table. Don't let them take what we built, Clara. My whole body shook, not with fear this time, but with something sharper, resolve. I stood and walked to the living room. Harold's photo smiled at me from the mantel. You protected me even now, I whispered, and I swear I'll protect this house. No more politeness. No more waiting. Vanessa thought I was weak. Thomas thought I'd crumble. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, I placed Harold's letter in the locked box in my closet, along with my birth certificate and the house deed. Then I picked up the phone and called Edith, my old friend from church. Edith, I said quietly, do you still have the number for that lawyer you used when your nephew tried to take your house? Edith didn't hesitate. Of course I do. And Clara, good for you. As I ended the call, a car engine rumbled outside. I peeked through the curtains and froze. Vanessa's SUV sat at the edge of my driveway, its engine still running. Was she watching me? By the next morning, I had made my decision. I wouldn't sit quietly while Vanessa plotted to rip my life apart. I tucked Harold's letter into my purse along with the house deed, slipped on my coat, and called Edith. Do you still trust that lawyer you mentioned? I asked. More than anyone, she replied. She's discreet, and she knows how to deal with family trouble. Family trouble. That was a polite way of putting it. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the waiting room of Miss Carter's small law office across town. Unlike Hamilton's polished, wood-paneled space, this one was functional and unassuming. A single potted plant in the corner, the faint hum of a copy machine in the background. Miss Carter greeted me with a firm handshake and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Clara Hughes, she said warmly, Edith told me you're in a delicate situation. Why don't you start from the beginning? I told her everything. Vanessa's fake sweetness, Thomas's silence, the care home brochures, the doctor's appointment trap, and finally, Harold's letter. I need to make sure they can't touch anything, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Miss Carter leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. Your late husband was smart. He built solid protections, but families like Vanessa and Thomas, they find ways to work around the law. My stomach tightened. What do you suggest? Her eyes sharpened. We're going to lock your finances down tighter than Fort Knox. We spent the next hour going over every detail. I set up alerts on all my bank accounts. No transfers allowed without my in-person signature. Miss Carter drafted documents to restrict access to my assets under any circumstances. And we began moving my investments into a private trust that only I could control. Make it so I'm the only one who can authorize changes, I said firmly. It'll be done, she promised. But be careful. If they realize you're getting your defenses in place, they may escalate. As I left her office, I wrapped my coat tighter around me and stepped into the cold afternoon air. That's when I saw it. Parked across the street, Vanessa's sleek black SUV. The engine was running. The tinted windows revealed nothing. My pulse quickened. Is she watching me? Or is this just a coincidence? I turned and walked in the opposite direction, keeping my pace steady even as my heart raced. Don't panic, Clara. Don't let her see you're afraid. Back home, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, exhaling shakily. They thought I was weak, but they were about to find out I wasn't as easy to erase as they thought. That night, I stood at my window and stared out into the darkness. A car idled at the end of the street. Was it her again? 2 days later, Vanessa showed up unannounced. Again. I was in the living room, watering Harold's rose plants on the windowsill, when I heard the click of her heels in the hallway. Clara, she called out sweetly. I brought dinner. Behind her, Thomas followed like a shadow, carrying a plastic bag of takeout containers. He didn't look up. What's their angle now? That's kind of you. I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. Vanessa placed the food on the table and pulled out a folded packet of papers from her handbag. Here it comes. Clara, we've been talking to some professionals about your well-being, she began, her voice dripping with fake concern. We spoke to another doctor who agrees it's time for you to have full-time care. My stomach turned cold. What doctor? I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Vanessa's eyes flickered, just for a second, before she slid the packet toward me across the table. Dr. Reed. He specializes in elder care assessments. I scanned the top page. It looked official. Too official. A neat letterhead. A recommendation stating I was showing signs of decline and should consider assisted living. But something about it felt wrong. The signature at the bottom, sloppy, rushed. Clara, don't take it the wrong way, Vanessa said quickly. This is for your safety. We'd hate for something to happen if you were here alone. Thomas cleared his throat, but still wouldn't meet my eyes. She's right, Mom. Maybe it's time to think about what's best. What's best for them. I set the packet down carefully and folded my hands. I'll call Dr. Patel tomorrow, I said coolly. If he agrees with this, we'll talk. Vanessa's smile twitched at the edges. Oh, I'm sure Dr. Patel would agree, but this is from a specialist. Even so, I replied, my voice steady. I'd like a second opinion. That evening, I sat in the dark, staring at the fake assessment Vanessa had left on the table. Dr. Reed. The name rang hollow in my head. Why hadn't I heard of him before? And why was Vanessa so desperate for me to accept this without a second opinion? I needed answers. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Dr. Patel's number, and pressed call. Clara, is everything all right? I need to ask you about a Dr. Reed, I said carefully. He sent me an assessment saying I can't live alone. There was silence on the line. Clara, there is no Dr. Reed practicing in this area. No one by that name has hospital privileges either. My blood turned cold. It's a fake assessment, he added gently. They're trying to force your hand. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. Thank you, doctor. I won't let them get away with this. That night, I set my phone on the dresser and stared at my reflection in the dark window. Vanessa thought she could outsmart me. Thomas thought he could stay quiet and come out clean. But they'd underestimated me. They didn't realize Harold had left me with more than just a house. He'd left me with a spine. The next morning, I slipped into the hallway, phone in hand. Thomas and Vanessa were in the living room, their voices low and urgent. I turned on the recording app and held the phone behind me as I stepped closer. She's stalling, Thomas, Vanessa hissed. The longer we wait, the harder this gets. Thomas let out a frustrated sigh. She's still our mother. Maybe we should slow down. Vanessa's voice sharpened. Do you want to keep living paycheck to paycheck? Or do you want that house sold so we can move on? Thomas didn't answer. We're so close, Vanessa said, her tone softening into something more dangerous. Once she's out, we list the house and split the money. She won't even know what hit her. Every word felt like a blade sinking into my back. I clenched my jaw to keep from crying out. My own son, sitting there while his wife plotted to erase me like I was nothing. I turned and slipped quietly back to my room, my phone still recording. As I closed the door behind me, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage. They're not even hiding it anymore. The house was silent, but my mind wasn't. Every word from Vanessa's mouth still rang in my ears. Once she's out, we sell the house and split it. And Thomas's silence. Always silence. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone screen. The recording app blinked red as the file uploaded to the cloud. Then I sent it to both my lawyers, Hamilton and Miss Carter, under the subject line Urgent Evidence. A copy went to my own email account. Another was stored on a flash drive I tucked into the back of the silverware drawer. And the last copy, burned to a CD, went into Harold's old lockbox in the closet, alongside his letter and the deed. Just in case they try something drastic, I murmured under my breath. The next morning, I woke early to the sound of birds outside the window. But something felt off. When I came downstairs, the hallway table looked wrong. The small dish where I kept my house keys was empty. I froze. The front door was locked. Windows, too. But the keys? Gone. My pulse quickened. Had Vanessa taken them? Or Thomas? Was this their next move? I grabbed my phone and texted Miss Carter. The keys are missing. Could this be a setup? Her reply came within minutes. Possibly. Stay inside for now. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll call you in an hour. At noon, I heard a car engine in the driveway. Vanessa. I peeked through the curtains as she got out of her SUV, her lips pressed in that tight little smile she wore when she thought she was winning. Thomas followed her, his shoulders slumped. I stepped back from the window, my heart pounding. They hadn't knocked yet. Instead, I heard the faint scrape of metal at the front door. The deadbolt clicked. My keys. They'd taken them. I darted to the back door and slid the chain lock in place. My fingers trembled as I dialed Miss Carter. They're here. They're letting themselves in. Stay calm, she said firmly. Don't engage. If they enter, call the police immediately. I didn't have to wait long. The front door creaked open. Clara! Vanessa's voice rang out. Too cheerful, too loud. Vanessa glanced at her watch and stood abruptly, her smile brittle. We won't take up more of your time today, Clara, she said, her tone deceptively sweet. But tomorrow we'll come by early to help you pack. Maplewood has a lovely room ready. You'll settle in quickly. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. This is for the best, Mom, he mumbled. I didn't reply. Instead, I followed them to the door and watched their car pull away, my fingers tightening around the frame until my knuckles turned white. They thought they were in control, but they didn't know about the recording, or the lawyers, or Harold's letter. By noon, the grocery bags in my hands felt heavier than usual. I'd only been gone an hour. But when I turned the corner onto my street, my stomach dropped. The curtains in my living room window were drawn tight, unlike when I left, and my front porch light, which I always left on during errands, was off. Something was wrong. I climbed the steps slowly, my heart pounding. The key I kept on a chain around my neck slid into the lock. I twisted. Nothing. The deadbolt had been thrown from the inside. I rattled the doorknob. Locked. A shadow moved behind the curtains. Then the window cracked open an inch. Vanessa's face appeared, her expression cold and triumphant. Clara, there you are. What's going on? I asked sharply, my voice louder than I intended. We've made arrangements for you, she said smoothly. Maplewood Senior Living is expecting you this afternoon. It's for your own good. Open the door, Vanessa, she smiled thinly. Don't make this harder than it has to be. The car's waiting. I stepped back, clutching the grocery bag so tightly the plastic handles dug into my skin. Where's Thomas? I demanded. Inside, she replied. He agrees this is the best thing for everyone. Everyone but me, I thought bitterly. I dropped the bags on the porch and pulled out my phone. My hands trembled as I scrolled to Miss Carter's number. It started, I said when she answered. They've locked me out. Her voice was calm but urgent. Step away from the door. I'm calling the police now. Stay on the line with me. Behind the glass, Vanessa's voice grew sharper. Clara, don't embarrass yourself. You're not safe here anymore. It's time to let go. This is still my house, I shot back, my voice breaking slightly. You have no right. The house isn't safe for you, she interrupted, her tone saccharine. You'll thank us later. 2 police cars pulled into the driveway 15 minutes later, their lights flashing silently. Vanessa's expression faltered as 2 officers stepped out and approached the porch. Ma'am, can you explain what's happening here? One asked. Before I could answer, Vanessa swooped in with a pitiful look. Officer, we're trying to help my poor mother-in-law transition into assisted living. She's been confused lately, forgetful. We're worried about her safety. My blood boiled. That's a lie, I snapped. I'm not confused, and I'm not going anywhere. The officer turned to me. Ma'am, do you have proof this is your residence? I yanked out my wallet and handed over my driver's license. The deed is in my name, I added. Call my lawyer. She's already filed protections on this property? Vanessa's face paled slightly. Officers, really, this doesn't have to get ugly, she said, her voice tight. We just want what's best for her. What's best for me, I said coldly, is you staying out of my house. The officers exchanged a glance. One stepped aside to call dispatch, verifying my claim. Vanessa's mask cracked for the briefest second. Her nails tapped an angry rhythm against her phone. Thomas still hadn't appeared. As the officer spoke quietly into his radio, Vanessa turned her gaze on me, her voice a low hiss. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life." 3 weeks later, I sat in the courthouse, my hands folded tightly in my lap. The walls felt too tall, too cold, but I kept my chin up. Across the aisle, Vanessa lounged in her chair, legs crossed, her silk blouse crisp and immaculate. Her nails tapped an impatient rhythm on the table. Thomas sat stiffly beside her, staring down at his folded hands. I barely recognized him anymore. The judge shuffled papers and adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Hughes, you're petitioning to retain full control of your residence and finances, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "And you've brought evidence to support your claim?" "I have." My lawyer, Miss Carter, stood and handed over a flash drive. "This contains a recorded conversation between Mrs. Hughes's son and daughter-in-law, discussing plans to remove her from her home and sell the property for their own benefit." The courtroom went still. Vanessa's head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing into slits. The judge pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the room. "She's stalling, Thomas. The longer we wait, the harder this gets. Once she's out, we list the house and split the money." Thomas's voice followed, hesitant but damning. "I just don't want her to hate me." The words echoed like gunfire in the silent courtroom. Vanessa shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous. She's twisting everything. We were only trying to help her." The judge's gavel slammed down. "Sit down, Mrs. Hughes. You'll have your turn." Miss Carter handed over another file. "We've also included medical statements from Dr. Patel, affirming that Mrs. Hughes is fully capable of living independently and does not require assisted care." The judge scanned the papers, his expression hardening. "This smells of financial coercion," he muttered. Vanessa's perfect composure cracked. "We were just trying to do what's best. The house is too much for her." "Enough." The judge's voice boomed through the room. "You and your husband attempted to force Mrs. Hughes out of her own home and fabricate medical evidence to take control of her assets." Thomas sank lower in his chair. "Your Honor," he began weakly, but the judge cut him off. "Petition denied. Mrs. Hughes retains full control of her home and finances. Any further interference will result in legal action." The gavel slammed. It was over. As I stood to leave, Vanessa hissed under her breath, "This isn't the end, Clara." I met her gaze squarely. "Oh, yes, it is." The courthouse steps felt steep under my feet, but my back was straight as I descended them. The sun was blinding that afternoon, and the flash of cameras made it worse. Reporters crowded in, shouting over each other. "Mrs. Hughes! Is it true your family tried to steal your inheritance? How does it feel to win back control of your home?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Behind me, Vanessa erupted. "This is all lies. She manipulated everyone. She's senile." Her voice cracked mid-sentence. Reporters swiveled toward her, like sharks circling fresh blood. "Mrs. Hughes, did you forge medical records to take your mother-in-law's house?" one asked, holding a microphone inches from her face. Vanessa recoiled, her carefully constructed mask breaking into jagged pieces. "No." That recording was taken out of context. This is her fault. Thomas stood a few paces away, staring at the pavement. His face was pale, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. "Vanessa, let's go," he muttered. But she wasn't done. "You didn't handle her properly," she screamed, her voice raw with fury. "I told you to make her sign." He turned on her so fast it startled even me. "Enough." His voice was low, tight, but final. "You've ruined everything. I warned you this would blow up in our faces." Vanessa's mouth opened, like she might argue, but Thomas didn't wait. He turned and walked away, his steps quick and deliberate. Vanessa froze on the courthouse steps, her eyes wild as the reporters closed in again. "Thomas, don't you dare walk away from me." But he didn't look back. Not once. I watched the scene from the back seat of Miss Carter's car. The door closed quietly behind me, shutting out the chaos. "Are you all right?" Miss Carter asked, her eyes searching mine in the rearview mirror. "I'm fine," I said softly. "Better than I've been in months." And it was true. For the first time since Harold's funeral, my lungs felt like they could fill properly. Vanessa had lost control. Thomas had walked away. But deep down, I knew she wasn't finished. Not yet. That night, I sat by the fire in my living room, Harold's letter on my lap. "They'll come for what we built. Stand firm, my love." I traced the edges of his handwriting, my mind sharp and focused. Vanessa's downfall had begun, but I wasn't going to stop here. Later, I received an email. It sat open on my screen, glowing in the dim light of the study. Notice of foreclosure. Vanessa Hughes. I let out a long, slow breath. It had started. 3 months ago, Vanessa had stood in my living room, all fake smiles and manicured nails, insisting I was too frail to live alone. Now the house she'd been so desperate to claim was gone. Repossessed. The headlines hit the news like wildfire. Local couple accused of financial coercion against elderly widow. Inheritance battle turns ugly in court. Vanessa's carefully curated social life crumbled. Friends distanced themselves. Her business partners pulled out of their ventures. And Thomas? He filed for divorce 2 weeks after the foreclosure notice. "She destroyed everything," he muttered when reporters caught him outside his office. I should have stopped her when I had the chance. For the first time, I didn't feel anger when I saw his face on the television screen. Just nothing. I spent the next few days quietly tending Harold's rose bushes. The spring air felt lighter somehow, the sky clearer. Neighbors waved as they walked by. One of them stopped, clutching the local paper. "Clara, is this true? Did they really try to take your home?" I nodded. "It's true, but they didn't succeed." That night, I sat in Harold's old armchair by the window, watching the sun dip low. On the mantel, his letter rested in its frame. "You protected me even now, my love," I whispered, "and I finished what you started." Weeks later, I stood in front of a small crowd at the local community center. "My name is Clara Hughes," I began, my voice steady, "and I'm here to talk about elder financial abuse." The room was silent as I told my story, not to shame Vanessa and Thomas, but to warn others who might find themselves in my shoes. A woman in the front row dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "You're so brave," she whispered as I stepped down. On my way home, I passed a familiar street. A for sale sign stood in front of Vanessa's foreclosed house. The lawn was overgrown, the windows dark. I didn't stop, not even for a moment. Back at my house, sunlight streamed through the curtains, warm and golden. I set a fresh bouquet of Harold's roses in a vase on the kitchen table. For the first time in months, I felt free.